So I'm going to start off this morning's talk actually with a challenge to everybody that's listening. And the question I'd like you to play with over the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, really is the question that starts off is, how can I get better at using God? Now, I know that sounds like a crazy question, right? How can I get better at using God? And by the way, that's what the name of the talk is. I'm not sure what happened with the description of the talk, but that's what the name of the talk is getting good at using God. Now, I know some people out there may say something like, well, Mike, we don't use God. God uses us, right? But here's the thing. What I realize is that as I grow in my own spiritual journey, what I've observed time and time again is actually just the opposite. And what I mean by that is that when I look back at my life, when I struggled the most, I could see where God was barely a part of the equation at all, really. And that what I was actually doing was just the opposite of using God, but actually forgetting to use God at all. Has anybody been there in your life where things get really, really super intense and we kind of forget, we kind of fade, we kind of get away from God, if you will? And that's just an observation I've had in my own life. And what I'm starting to understand is my relationship with God goes even deeper, that my life seems to be getting better and better and better and better. And so my definition, if you will, of this thought or this idea of using God is actually pretty involved. It actually starts off with engaging with God on a regular basis. And that's with talking and praying with God. In the morning, a lot of you know that I've got a morning routine that I go through on a regular basis, and I know several of you do as well. And it also includes dancing, what I call dancing with God, and singing with God, and laughing and crying with God. So, in other words, what I have found is the more that I use God, if you will, that there's endless ways that I can actually do it, right? And so, in fact, it's one of the main reasons why I love unity so much, is that unity gives us the ability to take our relationship with God to even a deeper level and use God even more. For example, I mean, you can use God by using the 12 powers that the Fillmores talked about, would be one way of doing it. And as I continue my own relationship with God, what I've come to believe when it comes to using God is really the only thing that limits how I can use God comes down to me and my own creativity and my own limited beliefs about who and what I am. And really, what it comes down to it's got nothing to do with God at all in any way, shape, or form. Because in my experience, there's nothing that's out of the reach or off base when it comes to God and your divinity. Absolutely nothing. From the profound to the profane. It's just a simple thing, is just knowing that God is always there, that you can always connect with God in any way, shape, or form. And speaking of profound stories and using God, I want to share one with you this morning. So on December 17th, 1903, two brothers from Dayton, Ohio, with no formal engineering training, defied gravity in their curious flying machine over the dunes of North Carolina's remote Outer Banks by making what many considered the first powered, sustained, and controlled manner airplane flights. Orville and Wilbur Wright ushered in the era of flight and soared into history. Now, we all know that story. Pretty basic, right? But let me share a little bit more with you that I found fascinating as I dug into this. And that is that Wilbur and Orville were the sons of Milton and Susan Wright, members of a warm, loving family that encouraged learning and doing. Their dream started with an idea that was planted in their minds by a toy given to them by their father. In the words of the boys, in late autumn of 1878, their father came into the house one evening with some object partly concealed in his hands. And before they could see what it was, he tossed it into the air. And instead of falling to the floor as they expected, it flew across the room until it stuck in the ceiling, where it fluttered for a while and then finally sank to the floor. The simple toy made of cork, bamboo, and paper, powered by a rubber band, mesmerized the boys and sparked their passion for aviation. So the Wright brothers were great thinkers. They enjoyed learning new things. Initially, they recycled broken parts, built a printing press, and opened their own printing office. And in 1894, Wilbur and Orville were caught up in the bicycle craze that swept the nation. To augment the income from their printing trade, they began repairing and selling bicycles. This soon grew into a full-time business, and in 1896, they began to manufacture their own bikes. The Wright Cycle Company returned a handsome profit, but the brothers cared little about the money. They were already thinking about trading their wheels in for wings. The tight-knit brothers, born 4 years apart, were wedded to their work, and Wilbur told reporters that he didn't have time for both a wife and an airplane. So they kept spending many, many hours researching, testing their machines, and making improvements after unsuccessful attempts at flight. What started out as a hobby soon became a passion. With determination and patience, they realized their dream in 1903 when they made the first sustained controlled flights in a powered aircraft, which they named the Wright Flyer. While the 1903 Wright Flyer did indeed fly, it was underpowered and difficult to control. And for 2 years, they made flight after flight, fine-tuning the controls, engine, propellers, and configuration of their airplane. At first, they could only fly in a straight line for less than a minute. And by the end of 1905, they were flying figure eights all over Huffman Prairie, staying aloft for over a half an hour or until the fuel ran out. And in 1905, the Wright Flyer was the world's first practical airplane. So the next time you hear or see an airplane, in fact, we might hear one today as I'm speaking, the next time you see one, just remember where it all started. This simple idea, conceived in the minds of two young boys who did not even finish high school. That's right. They were the ones that created the airplanes, and they didn't even finish high school. Believe it or not, they didn't have a university degree in aeronautical engineering, mathematics. They didn't have a degree in physics or any other subject. They were not scientists in the true sense of the word. In fact, many of their peers who did not witness their accomplishments had trouble believing the two bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio did what they claimed. They couldn't believe it just because they couldn't believe that they were able to do that. What had happened is the Wright brothers had a cause and they wouldn't give up on. They never let failure or setback discourage them. When knocked down, they made no excuses. They got back up and they kept going. Today, the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force, located near Dayton, Ohio, is one of the world's largest military aviation museums, featuring more than 360 aerospace vehicles and missiles on displays amid more than 19 acres of indoor exhibit space. Each year, more than 800,000 visitors from around the world come to the museum. It's the oldest and largest military aviation museum in the world. This place, and the reason I use this story is because this is near and dear to my heart, because when I was a small child, my father took me to the Air Force Museum because my father was a pilot. And so when I think about this story, and it kind of comes full circle with this idea of using God, I want you to imagine this, that God, we can use God in so many ways. There's so many different things that we can do. And in this case, it just happened to be an idea that was given to these young boys that took this idea and they ran with it. In other words, this flash of inspiration, they took it and they changed our lives as a result of it. And so this idea of using God is literally limitless in terms of how far you can take this. There are no limits with how you can use God. And we've got tons of examples citing that. So how about one of our favorites that we always talk about, Myrtle Fillmore? So in How to Let God Help You, Myrtle had a very creative way to use God. It had to do with the way she reviewed people she came in contact with. So in the book, she says, thinking habitually about people, their actions, their human limitations, tends to bind one to personal consciousness. To do the great works that Jesus promised, one must raise his or her own consciousness to the place where they're able to see the perfect image, likeness of God in all people. So Myrtle, in her own mind, when she saw somebody, regardless of what was going on, regardless of what the appearance was, regardless of anything else, would always know that she was looking at basically the likeness of God, no matter what the circumstances were. And that's what she did. She goes on to say that one must not let themselves be influenced by the likes and dislikes of human nature. Christ is the real self of each individual. By seeing only the Christ in all people, we not only strengthen our own spiritual consciousness, but help all whom we come in contact to realize and express their own innate divinity. So what did Myrtle do? Think about it. What she did is she acknowledged the divine in every single person that she came in contact with, therefore elevating their own consciousness because she refused to see anything less than their divinity. Powerful, powerful, powerful examples of the way that we can use our own divinity and God, in a sense. So the thing I'm going to just keep mentioning is this idea is, how can you use or connect with God even more than you did the day before? How can you? Is it possible? And what I would say is you can constantly be adding to it or taking it deeper. So there's so many stories even in the Bible that I could have picked for this example. But the one I chose to is in the Old Testament in the book of Kings. There's a story about Elijah in the wilderness. And the story says that then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Leave here and turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. And sure enough, the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, where he came to the town gate, and a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and he asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called, and bring me a piece of bread. And she said back to him, as surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son that we may eat. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain onto the land, because there had been a drought there. So she went away, and she did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and for her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. So here we have these two people, Elijah and this woman. They basically used or leaned on the Lord in terms of trusting and believing that this stuff would happen. And so it's just another example of how we get good at using God. And how did they do it? By using their trust and using their faith. That is how they wound up doing it. Another way in terms of using God is through the power of our own words, by using affirmations that are one of the most cornerstones of the entire unity movement, right? What Charles and Myrtle knew was that our words have the power beyond them because of who and what we are. In his classic Jesus Christ Heals, Fillmore states, words are quickened by those who speak them, and they pick up and they carry the ideas of the speaker, weak or strong, ignorant or wise, good or ill. I'm going to say that again. Words are quickened. In other words, they pick up power, they pick up energy by those who speak them, and they pick up and carry the ideas of the speaker. And there's no judgment. It doesn't matter what these words are. He says weak or strong, ignorant or wise, good or ill. So it's kind of like words are neutral. So choose them wisely. He goes on to say, thus words using the name of God, prayer and meditate are given a spiritual impetus far beyond what they would receive from common words. Tell me more about that, Charles. He goes on to say that Unity healers have found that this promise is fulfilled when they concentrate in prayer and positive affirmations on the presence of the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ. A new and strong contract is felt with spiritual life, as if it were a mighty battery when the name of Jehovah, God, or Jesus Christ is spoken silently and audibly. The word Jehovah or Yahweh is charged with spiritual power far above and beyond any other word in the human language. So one of the things that we can do is we can use our own words in terms of getting good at using God. We get good at using our own divinity. And so what I'd like to do this morning, and I know it's going to seem a little bit weird, if you will, is I'd like to do a little meditation with you this morning. So guys, if we could turn the lights down a little bit. Ray, if you could do what you always do. And as you close your eyes, I just want you to start to relax. I just want you to let go of the time it took you to get here, to let go of the day, to just simply start to slow down. Slow down and just start to relax. I always love to start meditation with a couple of deep breaths. Maybe take a deep breath in and let it out. And then maybe take another deep breath in and let it out. Now just take a moment just to connect with yourself. Maybe put your hand over your heart. And just imagine connecting with yourself. Imagine just saying, hi, good morning, how are you? And make this connection with yourself. Just take a moment. And then what I want you to imagine doing is connecting with Source. Whatever that means to you, just imagine connecting. Feel the connection with God. Just take it in. And just feel your connection. Slow everything down. And connect with God. And now what I want you to do is I just want you to repeat the following with me. I am raised to the perfection in mind and body by the healing power of Jesus Christ. And I'm just going to keep repeating it a few times. I am raised to perfection in mind and body by the healing power of Jesus Christ. I am raised to perfection, mind and body, by the healing power of Jesus Christ. And one more time. I am raised to perfection in mind and body by the healing power of Jesus Christ. Just be with that for a few moments. And then what I'd like you to do is just start to come back. Maybe say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Spirit. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do for us. The things we're aware of and the things that we're not. For your light, for your love, your energy, your peace. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now you can start to come back into your body. Wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. How was that? My hope it was good for you. My hope was to have you have a little bit of an experience of what it's like to use God in the terms of your spoken word, even if you did it silently, to invoke that power in the words of Jesus Christ, or if you use Spirit, or if you use Jehovah, whatever works for you. But just invoking that Spirit is just another beautiful, beautiful way to actually use your own divinity and use God. So as you go forth in this week, the thought or the idea that's coming through my mind is just this idea of just getting better at using God. Set it as one of your intentions. My intention is to get better at using God, using my own divinity, my own God-given connection, my own God-given ability, and having access to those things, these gifts that I've been given, to make my life maybe a little bit easier, maybe a little bit better. How can you get better? How can you get better at doing that? I would say that there's a pretty good high probability that you could probably even get better at using God than you currently are, even if you are really good at it. And I know there's some of you out there that are really good at doing that, right? But even as I explore my own walk, my own relationship with God, I'm going to say it again, that there's no limit other than my own creativity that limits how I can continuously be using this energy in my life There's no limits, none. So some of you know, and it went through the electricity that went out. And we had the same thing. We had our electricity went out for about a day and a half. And I just remember when it happened. And I thought, oh my God, right? Here we go again. I don't want to have to do with this. What an inconvenience it is, right? So that's the first crack at it. But then as I was preparing for this talk, I thought to myself, and I thought, well, what would be a different way to look at this? How can you actually take this thing and actually apply what it is that you're going to be talking about, Mike? Not a bad idea, right? In other words, a little taste of my own medicine. And I thought, well, okay, how could I look at this thing and make it a little bit fun and make it, I don't know, a good experience? And as I opened myself up to the possibility of how I could make it fun, all of a sudden what I realized is, well, I just bought a generator about 6 months ago and I haven't had a chance to even hook it up to see if the thing works because I had to install an electrical circuit in my house and I really hadn't had time to connect it. And I thought, wow, this would be really, really cool. And so I hauled out my generator, I hauled out all this stuff, and I started playing with it. And you know what? It wound up being like so interesting to me how all the circuits connected, how there was some of the circuits I really didn't need, so I could turn them off, and that thing would make it go a little bit better. And the bottom line was, I just had a great time. I just thought it was so much fun and it was so interesting because I learned something I never knew before. And so I took something that I saw originally as being a huge inconvenience and I turned it into something that was actually a little fun. And what I'm sharing with you is just this little tiny example in my own life that you can take and actually use in your own life. Continuously connecting with your divinity, continuously connecting with God, continuously. And do this beautiful dance as we go through our lives. There is no limit in terms of the way that you can do this in any way, shape, or form. None. I have to admit, this has been a rather interesting experience because normally I'm sitting there looking at all of you and I'm just wanting to give you all a big hug. And I just want you to know how incredible you really are. These times aren't easy. There's some of you that are going through some really, really difficult times, and I know that. But I just want you to know how much you're loved, how much you matter, and more than anything, the difference that you're making. And I know that that doesn't always look that way, but I'm telling you, just because of who and what you are, you matter. You're making a difference. And I just want you to know how much I love you. And I want you to know how much of a difference you're making in my life. And I want you to know how grateful I am to each and every one of you. And while I may not be able to see you, I can certainly feel you because I am right now. I am really one of the luckiest guys on the earth. Having the opportunity to stand up here and do what I do and the blessings that I get from it is just simply mind-blowing to me. I am incredibly grateful to each and every one of you, and I want you to know that. Even with all this craziness that's going on, I'm a lucky guy. I love you. I'm grateful for you. If there's anything at all that I can do for you, please do not hesitate to reach out. Blessings to you and all that you see, and all of yours. God bless.